Hello and welcome to Vertical Insights from the Security Industry Association. I'm Cameron Walker Miller with SIA. Today's symposium is K through 12 School Security. It's underwritten today by our proud SIA member sponsors, ACRE and HID. About today's event, Vertical Insights is a series of virtual events presented by us at Security Industry Association, SIA, and focused on topics of vertical markets. The series is designed to bring together practitioners, security integrators, solution providers, consultants, and everyone else involved in protecting things in those key sectors. In today's session, ensuring the safety and security of K through 12 schools, it requires thoughtful planning, collaboration, and the use of planning and proven frameworks and technologies. So the discussion today is on key standards, guidance, shaping school security, featuring reps from our event partners, ASIS International, and the Partner Alliance for Safer Schools, also known as PASS. This symposium will explore widely used resources such as the ASIS School Security Standard, which is new, and the PASS School Safety Security Guidelines, along with broader approaches and technologies used to strengthen security programs in school environments. Today's panelists will share insights on how these frameworks and technologies support effective planning, risk management, implementation of school security safety measures. So whether you're a school practitioner, school leader, industry professional, this session should be valuable. As far as housekeeping, we'll go to each of our speakers and we'll have time for Q&A at the end. There's a chat feature in the Zoom tool, also in the LinkedIn tool. If you're watching on LinkedIn, send those in and they'll be passed along to me and we can share those and we'll ask them at the end of the event. So we're scheduled to go until 2:30 unless we have a little time and we can give you some time back in your day. So let me see what's next. So let's start with our first speaker. Chuck Wilson, Board Chair of Partner Alliance for Safer Schools. Hello, Chuck.
Hello. Thanks for having me on today. Yeah, my name's Chuck Wilson, and I'm one of the founders and along with Sia and the board chairman, kind of the acting director for the School Safety Alliance right now. So anyway, just wanted to skip through some slides real quick to talk about the 7th edition and what's new at the Partner Alliance for Safer Schools. So if we could skip to the next slide, I'll run through this real quickly. So this next slide is all about the what we call the famous, or this one before it. I just wanted to insert one quickly. The slide after this, if you could coordinate, this is about the reach that PASS has, which is a remarkable amount of multipliers out there. So we reach, as you can see here, a ton of people. We have 13,000 subscribers to our biweekly emails and everything. And with that, of the states that use the PASS guidelines, we have 28 states that are now very active in promoting the PASS guidelines. They then send that out to a huge listserv of people. So this just gives you an illustration of the reach that we have with PASS, and it's just grown like crazy in the last few years. On the next slide, what I was talking about is our famous bubble slide. So this is the most requested slide that we get for our partners that we co-brand with. And what this talks about is the personas of the people who the guidelines were intended for. And as you can see from these people, that with all the complexities of the systems that go into the technology roadmap that PASS provides to schools at no cost, and then all of the different groups that have to get together. We talk a lot about assembling a security team, and then what do we do with that team to plan, prepare, and practice. And so policies, procedures, rules, and training is what we have learned is equally as important to, if not more important to, than the technology itself and the system. So interoperability of systems and everything is wildly important. And this slide kind of captures what we're all about. On the next slide, it really describes the concept of what how the layered security works and how we've developed the guidelines to talk about, the layers. And the idea here is to apply appropriate amount of policy, procedures, and training and all the technology at each layer, starting from the district-wide, going right into the core of the classroom of the building. And what's new about Rev 7 here is really that digital perimeter that's been added to that, or the digital infrastructure. On the next slide, you'll see that the concept here is these components that the lady is holding the sign up. Those are the 7 components of technology, along with the policies, procedures, and training that apply to each of those layers that we have here. So this was completed at the end of 2025, and it was rolled out at our town hall meeting at ISC West a few months ago, when we unveiled how we were putting this all together, and what we have done to not only enhance the guidelines, but to overlay now with the ASIS security standard as well. So we're doing a kind of a mapping between what we're doing with PASS and what ASIS is doing with the standard. So they're very complementary in nature in that regard. The next slide, if you could, we show here on this next slide some of the updates to revision 7. I'm going to go through them real quickly here. So what we did now is, in preparation for all the analytics, the AI, looking at all the enhanced technologies, is we added more recommendations on the video side, different fields of view and different camera placements, because we have so many schools that want to use like AI for weapons detection and looking at anomalies out there, that we have to make sure that the field of view of the cameras are appropriate in the first place in order to do that. And then a lot of people are talking about, the appropriate use of cameras in the classroom. So we gave the recommendations on that. So the video surveillance has been updated dramatically. On the next slide, you'll see our next real update came on the access control side. We added graphics and images on Rev 7 that talk about the secure visitor entry, and this too maps with the ASIS standard that's out there now, so that they show the exact graphics and information that we have on the entrance, but we also dug deeper into the classroom door matrix that we show here. And then now we have come out and once again said that we believe that classroom doors should be closed and locked during, from bell to bell during the class periods. So that was a big thing that, not everybody embraces that concept right away, but it is the right thing to do. On the next slide, you'll see the elements we added on the district-wide layer, and it really talks about the unification of systems and the collaboration between, the Security Operations Center, if it were a district-wide, or, having a larger group that manages the Operations Center for the school. So really what we're talking about is that these disparate systems, when integrated properly, and it can unify these systems and make it for an easier to operate single dashboard pane of glass type operations now. On the next slide, you'll see the communications layer, and this is a big deal here. So as we see things like Alyssa's Law proliferating throughout the country, we have to realize that in order to accommodate wireless technology for the use of panic alarm devices, is that we have to make sure that we have adequate RF coverage. We have to have reliable in-building wireless communications coverage in order to accommodate those systems. So now what we're doing is we're working more closely, as that bubble slide implied, having all of that team put together, including law enforcement. We have to work more closely with PSAP and the 911 centers to make sure that the applications that we're putting in schools are compliant and compatible with the software and all the CAD systems that are at the PSAP and the dispatch center. So there's a lot of new guidance on that. On the next slide, you'll see the digital infrastructure. So this was probably the biggest addition, and something we worked on for 2 or 3 years now, where we got some of the leading cybersecurity experts, network experts together, And we said, okay, what guidance? And this was based on feedback from the schools. They wanted us to give more guidance on what they can do to, prevent ransomware attacks and all the things that schools are very vulnerable for, and buttoning down the firewalls and making sure that we're protecting the faculty and the students in that building. So there's a whole lot that's been added, in the IT digital infrastructure area. On the next slide, you'll see where we have made a big announcement. So this year is the first time. This has been, again, something we've been working on for years, but we're coming up with a program called PIP, Pass in Practice, and this is basically an education program, an online education program, and then a certificate program where people can go through a self-paced learning module after module based on the different components, and then be able to get a certificate and a badge that would show that they've been through this seminar that we provide, this course. And it's particularly beneficial for partners that are looking to, utilize the guidelines more effectively and stuff. On the next slide, you'll see where we have finally responded to the overwhelming demand, I guess, or request from school officials that we create a digital version of the checklist. So this has been in the works again for a long time, just now released, and it's available to everybody now to go into the checklist in the back of the guidelines and be able to do that gap analysis, if you will, do the threat assessment, the risk assessment, going through an audit at the facility, and being able to do that on a laptop or PC or tablet, so you don't have to do the pencil and paper if you don't want to. It's still going to be available in a fillable PDF for everybody too, though. The next slide just kind of shows a little bit more about that, but this is how it would actually look. So it maps with the paper version of that. It maps with the layers, and then you just go through and you can click on link by link, so you don't have to do it all at once. You can just do the district wide layer if you want for now, and then do the network. The network one takes a long time to get through that because there's a lot of detail within that. And so you can start and stop and do it, more over a week or two if you need to spread that out. But a lot of people are wanting to use that to send it right directly to the accreditation bodies and stuff. So that's been the big news, I guess, for PASS, is the education program and the digital checklist. On the next slide, you will see that we've added a component to all of our emails that go out. So we're going to have a grant and funding corner on our email. So twice a month, we're going to give information about what grants are out there, what bills might have funding attached to them. PASS has a real strong position statement on this, is that we don't want to see unfunded mandates put into law where schools have no ability to pay for the things that lawmakers have just now said that they have to have in their schools. So we can only educate and inform lawmakers of what's going on. So we don't take an active role in legislative activity, but a lot of our partners do. So we just inform, educate, and try to keep everybody, made aware that it's unfair to a school district to have an unfunded mandate. And so we try to get funding for those things. On the next slide, you'll see where we have found that in working with a partnering group with the Security Industry Association and Texas State University, is that they are coming out. We were hoping it'd be done last month, but it's this month now, where we're having an actual research project available to us on the effective use of secured doors, secured lock, and having investigated, 64, I think it is, incidents in schools where it talks about how the doors held up or didn't in some cases, and how the breach was done and everything. But it's a really, really good report that we're going to make available very soon now. Next slide is about the announcement that we have with the Safe and Sound Schools. So July 16th and 17th down in the Charlotte area, we're going to do a joint PASS and SAS co-hosted conference. And so people will be invited to attend this. We're just now putting together the final curriculum and the outlay for that. So it will be promoted and announce real quickly on the pass side. So anyway, that's what I got. So Courtney, thank you for allowing me to present, and Cam, I appreciate that. PASS is all a volunteer organization, so just wanted to thank all of our partners and all of our volunteers for making a big difference in 2026. So,
Excellent.
Cam,
Thanks, Chuck. Thanks, Chuck. And thank you for that great overview about PASS. And the PASS website, passk12.org. For more
correct.
information for everybody, there's resources. And if you want to get involved with PASS and a little more about what Chuck just said about that event with Texas State, along with SIA, everyone who's registered for this will automatically be registered for a webinar on June 18th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, to talk about this research being conducted by Texas State University. So you'll get more information about that afterward.
June 18th. Perfect. Thanks.
Thanks, Chuck. Next, we're going down to Mike Garcia from HID, all the way down in Texas, K through 12 school safety evangelist, I'm sorry, and vertical director at HID. Hey, Mike.
How are you, sir? Very
Good. I'm good.
Good. That's good. Yeah, I'm in Texas right now, and it's sunny and 85. It's midday, so we're doing good. Nothing wrong with that. So thank you, Chuck, so much. I've been, Chuck has been with PASS since the beginning, and I came on shortly. They brought me on shortly after that, and Chuck mentioned some things, and as he was mentioning them, he said feedback from schools, right? So everything had the feedback from schools. And that's a very important piece because that's what drives PASS to do the things that we're doing, like, as he mentioned, the PASS in practice and the PASS in SAS. And all of these things are driven by the school members. And it's a beautiful thing to watch and watch it grow. And we'll talk a little bit more in my presentation about how we help the schools utilize PASS to even look for money and the funding and all those things. So we'll go from that. But the first one is why, right? So PASS members do this, pro bono. We dedicate a lot of our time to helping write the requirements, right? And we consider them the North Star for school safety and security. So when you've got a school and there's really nothing to point at, right? Before these ASIS standards that Drew and Jeff are going to talk about, which amazing efforts there from amazing people who really, really care. Before these came out, there was nothing to point to, right? So PASS was your North Star to say, hey, this is where we're going, right? So you take these PASS guidelines, you'd present them to the school board, you'd present them to your team of 8, right? School board plus the superintendent, and you'd use that as your guides to say, I'm not making this stuff up. This is actual, people that are writing these that have had decades of experience in school safety, which I haven't, right? Most of these school security directors in the beginning were doing something else, right? But they didn't go in as a school safety director. So thank you, Chuck, so much. And our why, I'm going to start with this slide. I'm going to start with my reasons, right? And some of the people that I talked to. So let's just go back to the English language. In the dictionary, you can find a word for a child who loses their parents, right? So that word is orphan. Child loses their parents, they are now an orphan. A wife loses her husband, she's a widow. A husband loses their wife, and they're a widower. But there's no word in the English language for a parent that loses a child, right? It's such a horrible thing. It's so awful that nobody has even put a word to it, right? And those are the things that we are doing together as PASS, as ASIS, as the organizations that are coming together now, because there's nothing else for us to do, right? We have no top level federal government support. There's a lot of things missing. Funding is one of the biggest. So we come together as a group, and we're doing this ourselves. And that's what I would say to the schools is, look, we we want to do this ourselves. I live 40 miles from Uvalde, right? And I was speaking for SIA in Washington, D.C. as Uvalde was going on, right? I got on a plane as soon as I could afterwards and flew to San Antonio, drove to Uvalde. On that plane, there was a reporter for the Washington Post sitting right behind me and Mike Matranga, who's a former Secret Service agent and former school safety director, former school board member. And we're talking about this. I got off the plane. The reporter comes to me and says, Mr. Garcia, heard you talking. Can you give me a quote? I said, yeah, absolutely. So here it is. Yesterday, the Uvalde school shooter was a teenager, Hispanic teenager in crisis living with his grandmother. Today, he's a monster because there was no adults that cared and cared enough to really see what kind of crisis this child was in, what kind of traumas he was suffering. And so those are the types of things that drive provision, our charter here. And I want to take you to some of the things that we do from the school hardening perspective, and we call this Unified School Safety and Security Programs. Next slide, please. So to sum this up, safety and security should be injected into everything that is the school district, right? We're working right now on multi-tiered systems of support, the whole child, and teaching these students as early as we can, early intervention, the earlier the better, age-appropriate trainings and sprinkling school safety and security around them so that by the time they get to high school, from elementary school and through middle school, they now are warriors for us. They're sheepdogs in their own right. And they are sitting there, see something, say something, and now do something, right? And you've heard the term, we need more mental detectors and less metal detectors. Well, we need both, right? But we really need to figure out how to do that based on the risk assessments that are happening in the schools. And back in the day, I used to visit a school and tell them, look, this starts with your risk assessment, right? I know there's quantitative and qualitative risk, but we're figuring out this risk assessment best based on these REM tools, best practices. Drew and Jeff do a lot of risk assessments who are here on this program all over the country for not only K-12, but all kinds of enclaves, right? Now my pitch changed from, hey, we're going to do a risk assessment first to you're going to download the past guidelines first, right? Because we really need to figure out where we are in this assessment. Are we a tier 1 school? Are we a tier 2 school? Where do we play in this game, and how do we go? Inject this into everything that you do, because when a child feels safe at home, at school, anywhere, but at school predominantly here, next to eating and breathing and sleeping, safety and security drive everything that goes on in their little lives, right? Belongingness, self-esteem, how accomplished they feel, the self-fulfillment type things. This is what allows them to thrive in this environment, right? And that includes health and personal security and the emotions, right? So we use this to work with, and there's 3 things that go on in my brain as this is moving forward. And it's mental health, school hardening, and emergency security operation planning, reunification, and restoration, right? Repair. So when we go into this and before we look at the school hardening piece, we really need to understand this, because when we inject mental health first aid and programs in there that are specific to focusing on behaviors like the behavioral threat assessments and things like that, now we go into the school hardening piece, right? Because if they do not respond to treatment, therapy, whatever the professional diagnosis is, and we're not saying that teachers have to be therapists, we're just saying that they have to focus on the behaviors and get to that child early before the therapist comes in, and with social and emotional love, inject the interventions into their lives, right? So next slide. Once you get through this understanding of Maslow's and understanding of the whole child and understanding of the teacher's role in this, because that teacher sees this child more than the parents do, right? So they understand what's wrong. They can recognize the behaviors and they can act on them accordingly. Now we say, hey, if they don't respond to treatment, if they don't respond to therapy, if they don't respond to the interventions, and they go to the school to harm themselves or others, we minimize loss of life. We minimize it with the school hardening circle here. That's part of this entire unified platform. And we say, what's involved in this? Well, so you have your foundational security components. And by foundational, I mean every school should have this. Every child deserves it. Every school administrator, teacher, staff member, paraprofessional deserves to have this. And what are they? Well, in its simplest form, it's access control, video surveillance, video management, VMS, alarm management. Alarms come in many shapes and forms, even the duress buttons, right? It's an alarm. And communications. So a good PA system, a good emergency alerting system, good emergency comms. When you have that platform in place, think Lego. Now you have your Lego set for safety and security, and everything you connect in that Lego set communicates with each other, talks to each other, is integrated into that platform, and goes from there. Here's an example. Your school board is getting pressure from the PTA, the parents, and the community for weapons detection. They saw it on Good Morning America. They saw it on the Today Show. They want these things because there's a high incidence of weapons happening, da, 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 da. Got it. Okay, I hear you. We're going to have to go out and we're going to have to go buy weapons detection. Let's do our research. Let's start. Well, part of that research is, here's our platform. This is the access control platform that we are using, right? And we have a gentleman today who's going to talk to us a little bit more about the platforms in this ecosystem, and everything that you clip onto your ecosystem talks together with everything else on that platform. Let's say weapons detection detects a weapon, and you say, hey, my rule here is if that weapons detection, now that it's tuned and there's all the false positives have been smoke screened out of it, when it goes off, now that it's tuned, I want to lock down the school by default. As soon as it goes off and we know it's a gun, we lock down the school. That can only be done on the unified platform, right? Alert, grabs it on the platform, and it locks down every single door by default until we figure out what that is, and then we open them back up. It is a what if then statement. Every camera, every door, every alarm point, command, contain, control, communications, automated lockdowns, real-time situational awareness using your video cameras. If there is something that happens out there outside of the building envelope in the school perimeter, as Chuck showed on the different layers of security, the perimeter layer, something happens before they get into the building, I can see it, I can take action on it, and I can minimize loss of life. I can do a lockdown, but I can also do a lockout. If it happens in the parking lot and there's a weapon in the parking lot, I can get them before they even attempt to go to the school building. So it's a beautiful thing when it's done the right way. And those are some of the things that what we're going to talk about later on in the program. The unified life safety system gives you visualization. Is it a dog? Is it a cat? Or is it a person actually trying to get on the school grounds that doesn't belong there? That's what that does. Helps with all kinds of different things. You've got your situational awareness, like I said earlier, your real-time ability to understand what's going on at that door, lock the door, open the door, district-wide, right? No matter where you are. Next slide. So if you think about how this works, think about your PC at home or your laptop at home and how all the different pieces that go into it. When you sit down at your computer and you say, hey, I want to print this form out, and you press print, you're going from a Dell computer to a Logitech mouse, right? To a Kensington keyboard, to an HP or a Lexmark printer. Right? You know, you got 4 different companies working on this one project. Well, it's the same way with schools. when you have elevators in your school and you have elevator control, you know who gets on, you can see them on the video, and you know when they get off, and you know what's going on. All of that together works as a type of risk management system, right? That allows you to provision and empower your SROs, your principals, your assistant principals, anybody that's involved in that safety committee that you have in your school district now has a very, very valuable platform that allows them to replace human efforts, not humans, human efforts with technical advances, with technology. And it helps validate and verify what's going on out there instead of guesstimating and talking over a radio that has no visualization. Now you have both. When you sit down at this operating system platform and everything is unified, now you can start doing the service level agreements that you've talked about before with local law enforcement, county law enforcement, state law enforcement, first responders, emergency responders. Now and we talk about Uvalde being 40 miles away from me. There were more police officers and law enforcement at Uvalde than there were soldiers at the Alamo. Right? It was a goat roping. We all know that. But we learn from it and we move on and we provision and empower our school safety professionals to do more with less and to really understand how to take control of this. And that's access control, right? Doing that allows us to definitely make sure that our incident response and our incident command systems, which are very manual in a lot of these schools and run by the incident commanders, now we have this platform that we can utilize to make sure that everything is going the way it needs to be. And when the worst situation that you can ever imagine happens, we're in control. That's access control. Next slide. They think that's it, right? Okay, so I'm done, but I want to leave you with this because it's very important. Right now, schools are not practicing risk management the way that risk management should be practiced. I hand this off to Drew and Jeff, and they are experts in risk management, right? When a school is able to start assessing, mitigating, and then managing their risk, we'll be in a whole different position. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mike. And thanks again to our sponsors, HID and Acre. And just like Mike wanted to hand it off over to ASIS, the team from ASIS talking about the new school safety standard. Let's bring to the stage Drew Necker, principal consultant at Co-Secure, and Jeff Slotnick, sitting in the airport, who just got off the airplane from Stratcon. Hey, guys.
Good afternoon or good day, folks, wherever you're at. And I don't know about the boys from ASIS, but maybe the pros from Dover if you're an old MASH person. But I am very appreciative for what I'm hearing today from Pass and from Mike. I mean, what we have here and what we're going to present to you folks today is so complementary to what they were speaking about. And we are truly partners in this area. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about the standard and what's contained in it, how standards are developed, and then from there, Drew is going to be talking about behavioral threat management and emergency operations and close us out. I apologize in advance for any background noise. I am sitting in the busiest airport in the world. So next slide, please. So ASIS standards at a glance. These are ANSI, American National Standards Institute, and ISO standards that are certified by the U.S. Safety Act. Next slide. And standards versus guidelines. Standards are best practice. In fact, I can tell you we had 50 committed professionals from various areas of expertise, school professionals, emergency management professionals, behavior threat management professionals, DHS CISA, and Secret Service NTAC that worked on this for 2.5 years, sometimes 3 meetings a week in excess of 3 hours per meeting. We also got public comment from almost every national association of school bodies. So school psychiatrists, school principals, elementary school principals, school social workers, school resource officers, all had the ability. In our first draft, we received over 520 comments. We also had a great core team, folks like Paul Tim, who's also on PASS, that worked with us on this and helped us to create our starting point document, which was really cool. Next slide, please. So there's a standards development process. Essentially, it goes from concept to technical committee to finished product. That's what this wheel shows you, but I don't want to spend a lot of time here. I really do want to get into the meat and potatoes of the standard. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. One more. There we go. So here we go. This provides the basis for a comprehensive school security program. We're going to talk about each of those areas in depth. And what this does is helps to provide the roadmap that a parent, a school principal, a school superintendent can use. As a matter of fact, I'm going to be meeting with Seattle Public Schools next week, and the first thing I'm doing is handing them a copy of this document. And it gives them a roadmap on how to prevent and mitigate security incidents in schools and create a culture of safety and security within their buildings. Next slide, please. So the standard consists of several parts. The first part is what we call establishing a school security program. And it consists of planning, implementation, operation, monitoring and measurement, because this is a continuous improvement process, and periodic management review. So it's a holistic process. It's not just a one and done. Of course, it starts with a quality risk, threat, and vulnerability assessment done by a competent professional, and then moves on from there. Next slide, please. So the annexes in this document are physical security systems and measures, BTAM, which I think is just amazing, emergency operations, and of course, all the references that are out there that are valuable, including the PASS guidelines, which we refer to here, to assist folks in getting more knowledge and having all the tools at their fingertips they need to make good decisions regarding school safety and security. Understand this standard is not a one size fits all. When we wrote this standard, not only did we have international participation, but even in the United States and North America, we realize that a school in rural Nebraska is very different than a school building in Brooklyn. So it is with that in mind that this was developed. Next slide, please. So physical security, as we heard from Mike just a moment ago, consists of security protective measures, security systems, which are vital and integrated systems, security protocols, and emerging technology to have good security. You know, we measure everything against detection, delay, and response, and of course, policies, procedures, training, and people and equipment. All those things have to be working correctly in order for us to have a comprehensive program. Plus, what we're looking to do in physical security is move the first critical detection point, where we first detect adversarial action, out to the street, out to the school parking lot, out to the sports field. We want to detect this before it gets into the building and stop it. Next slide, please. With that, I'll hand this over to my co-chair and great friend, Drew Neckar.
Thanks, Jeff. And I'm glad your flight was only delayed a little bit and you were able to get on the call with us today, because I am never nearly as eloquent as you are. So glad you could be here. The second annex to our standard we felt it was very important to include some guidance on behavioral threat assessment and management. I'm assuming that everyone on the call today is at least somewhat familiar with the concept of behavioral threat assessment and management, but as the speakers earlier in this program alluded to, this, in my mind, this is one of the key elements of ensuring a safer environment for our students. It's identifying when that person may become a threat of targeted violence, and then helping them de-escalate that through whatever measures are possible. So we had some great people working on this annex of the standard: Josh Valines, Dewey Cornell, input from the Association of Threat Assessment Professionals, all sorts of great things. And we really talk about, all right, what should a behavioral threat assessment and management program look like for a school? I mean, first, we do recommend that a school does have a behavioral threat assessment and management program, although I've been in very few schools lately that have not. Over the last decade, we've made huge leaps in that area and we've put things in place. But what should that program look like? What should the team, the multidisciplinary team that is the core of a behavioral threat assessment and management program, what should that consist of? Who should be involved? What disciplines do you want? Then what is the process that you should use first to identify a potential threat, then to notify the correct people, and then to assess it and move it forward? And how do you manage that? What is that management process for that initial de-escalation and then ongoing monitoring of that person, of that individual, to ensure that whatever caused them to begin that escalation on the pathway to violence in the beginning isn't recurring, and that we can ensure that they're not a threat, that they're a student versus a threat. Because truthfully, in our schools, the majority of the time, those people that we see as a threat of targeted violence are people who we are familiar with in the schools. And then how do we evaluate our program and ensure we're doing a good job? Next slide, please. The last annex to our standard is emergency operations. And there was a lot of debate amongst the committee of, okay, this is a security standard. Do we or do we not include emergency management pieces within that? But what that group came to, and the consensus that we came to, is that emergency operations in a school are so intrinsically linked to the physical security program and the behavioral threat and management program and all of those aspects that create a safer school that we had to address it in some way. So really the angle we came at the emergency operations annex from was, how should your school's security program fit into your emergency operations plan? We're not purely saying this is everything you need to know to develop a comprehensive emergency operations plan. We're not talking about pandemic. We're not talking about disaster on the playground that's not security related. But how should your security program plug into those greater planning efforts for a bigger school safety environment? And what can we do? What are the elements that should be in that plan? What are the assumptions we're making? Who should be responsible? What are the roles and responsibilities? And as a lot of the speakers have alluded to, those are going to differ. Who is responsible within a school is vastly different, to use Jeff's example of from a school in rural Nebraska, or closer to my experience, a school in rural Wisconsin, where my wife's a school board member, to a school in Brooklyn, New York. You do not have the same resources in a 500 child district like my school district that you do in Seattle Public Schools that Jeff's going to be working with. How do you make sure that the same important elements are still being taken care of, even if you may not have dedicated personnel? And then the resource coordination and functional annexes. How do you respond to these different security events? Next slide. So really, just to sum it up, while this standard gets into a lot of detail, I believe the total overall length of it is 106 pages. I think really basically, and what I tell my clients to try to distill it down for them is the key elements of this standard are, does your school have someone who has competence to understand the school security program? And that can be an internal individual, a security director. It can be an internal individual who's been given that responsibility on top of everything else, an assistant principal, a teacher, a school counselor, or it can be a third party you're hiring and bringing in, a consultant, or you can be working with your local law enforcement or other local resources, but making sure that your school has someone who has the competency to understand what a school security program should look like and what tools are available to mitigate the risks you identify. That person should then be working with the greater school community to identify what are the risks, what are the security risks that are unique to your individual school, your district, and then using those security tools that are outlined in PASS, outlined in this standard, outlined in a number of other places to mitigate those risks that they've identified. And then there should be a process to consistently and continually assess the effectiveness of those things you've put in place. That boils that 106 pages down to a couple key elements. And I think if you're moving in that direction, you're getting it put together and you're going to get there very quickly. Just one other thing, if you do want more details on that, Jeff and I are working on putting together for ASIS's GSX conference in September of this year, a one-day pre-seminar program giving more detail on each of these elements of the standard and really how to implement the standard. So with that, I'm going to hand it back to Cameron and we will continue. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Drew. And I have my copy of the standard right here. And you could go also to ASISonline.org to find out more about how you can obtain yours for your organization as well. So next we have Andy Schuler, Director of Sales of North America at ASIS Security. Hey, Andy.
Thanks, Cameron. Appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for your time today. I realize that I am the closer of the bunch, so hopefully I'm what's between you and some lunch for my friends on the west side of the country, and good afternoon to my friends on the east side of the country. So as Cameron said, I'm the Director of Sales for Eastern US and Canada. Been in the industry about 27 years. K through 12 has always been near and dear to my heart. I have a junior in high school, a junior in college, and very passionate about school safety. So next slide, please. You know, Chuck mentioned it earlier, and he showed a great example of, you know, what we would call a secure vestibule. And all too often, we focus entirely on that front entrance when it comes to school safety. But it's also important to look at, you know, a holistic approach when it comes to campus safety. So with that, you know, here are just 3 scenarios just to kind of get your mind thinking in the right direction there. Number one, you know, a gym exterior door gets propped open at lunch. Happens all of the time. It's held open for 40 minutes. There's no alerts, no response until a teacher notices it. Oftentimes that's too late. That's a major breach of security. Another example, you know, you've got a staff whose credentials been active for 6 months after termination, you know, and then they enter the building after hours. Again, a very large breach of security there. Classroom corridor with no access control. When Chuck mentioned the you know, the front entrance, it really, you know, was eye-opening, and I think it's extremely important that we're adopting and looking at the interior classrooms as well. And we'll get into that a little bit more in this presentation. So just to start out with, you know, the front door is the most visible vulnerability, but it's not the only one. So we're going to dive a little bit deeper into how we can protect the entire campus. Next slide, please. So working at ASIS Security, we're fortunate enough to offer both a cloud solution and on-premise solution. In the last 5 years, cloud has really moved to the forefront when it comes to access control. And here are a few few key points when we talk about cloud deployment. So number one, you're looking at distributed campuses. Oftentimes you've got multiple buildings spread across a large geographic area. And it's important that you've got one single dashboard that can control all of those and also partition those buildings out to allow people to administer buildings differently based on their user rights. It was mentioned a little bit earlier, lockdown. Lockdown is always key to an access control system. One command initiating lockdown. And then when we get to the next point there, being able to initiate that conveniently and quickly. So mobile command and control is very big within the access control environment, especially in K through 12. I live in Michigan, so we often have schedule changes due to weather events, typically snowstorms. I know it's challenging for school administrators to be able to make those changes on the fly. And the convenience of a mobile command and control app not only can help make changes to schedules quickly, can delete individuals, and as I mentioned earlier, administer lockdowns. Schools are often lean on IT teams. When you move to a cloud solution, no on-site servers, no firmware maintenance calls at 6 a.m., no issues with backups not being up to date. You're always current. You've got no manual firmware cycles or software updates or end-of-life surprises. And then the big one, oftentimes schools depend on our integrators as partners to help them take care of service issues and to have the ability to triage a system remotely before rolling a service truck gets that access control system back up working much quicker to make sure that your partners arrive on site with the tools that they need to have a one-time fix there. So next slide, please. When we talk about cloud solutions, we'll get into the financial aspects of it right now, but we talk about an OpEx versus CapEx expenditure. So when we're looking at on-prem solutions, typically you've got a server, you've got hardware, you've got licenses, you've got refresh cycles, and that all contributes to additional cost. You've got IT maintenance, you've got real estate within an IT closet, you've got a server which typically needs to be upgraded every 3 to 5 years. You've got downtime and incident response costs. You're not able to use those convenient factors that we talked about earlier. And then you've got surprise capital replacement requests. If that server fails, are you budgeted to be able to replace that, or is that coming out of a different fund? When we talk about cloud and the OpEx model, it can also be done as a capital expenditure for projects. But when we look at the ongoing costs, you can really predict that. You can plan for it. Your updates are done automatically. You don't have the IT maintenance burden. There's very few capital replacement projects, and none for that matter when you talk about a server replacement, because everything is handled within the cloud. Extremely scalable. As your needs change, you don't have to upgrade any infrastructure. You just simply add to your deployment and push everything out to the cloud accordingly. I've seen total cost of ownership models and payback analysis and return on investments be as little as less than 12 months. I think you're safe saying, 5 to 7 years is about the sweet spot when you're looking at a cloud deployment. Next slide, please. So how do we move from a on-prem solution to a cloud solution if you choose? And we really like to talk about that modernization without disruption. So it starts with planning, obviously. You need to take a look at your current hardware solution, make sure that you can identify a proper migration path for that hardware if it needs to be replaced, or simply an upgrade of the software if it is non-proprietary hardware. Then you can do a phased deployment. You can do it building by building, and you can also bridge those two systems together oftentimes so that you've got one system that is your kind of your truth point where you're administering all of your changes. And then phase 3 obviously is the full cloud management, where you're up to date, you're on a cloud solution, and you're future proofed at that point. But we talked about it earlier, and the critical variable is open hardware. Open platforms, I'm a big fan of open platforms, not only in access control, but in video as well. And the reason for that is, your integrator, your vendor, your partner, your manufacturer in a cloud environment with open hardware has to earn your business every year. Whereas with a proprietary system, oftentimes, they've kind of got you stuck a little bit with the hardware that's been deployed. So I encourage all of you to consider open platforms when you're looking at access control. And it also eliminates, the rip and replace. We were talking about migrations earlier. This really allows you to protect your investment long-term and plan your budgets accordingly so that you don't have to do a full rip and replace if you choose to move to a different access control platform. Next slide, please. So a little bit deeper when we get into proprietary versus open. Single vendor dependency on pricing and roadmaps. That's key there. When you look at an open hardware platform, you've got multiple options when it comes to software providers in access control. End-of-life decisions are often made by the vendor, not the district. So you're kind of forced sometimes to migrate or move off of a platform or upgrade outside of your budget. You don't always have the ability to plan for that in advance, where with an open platform, you have that ability. And then you've got limited integration options. We talked about it earlier on the call today about kind of, bringing in all of your systems and integrating them accordingly. And when you look at an open platform, it allows for much more robust integrations, phased migration path, again, that no rip and replace required to move your software forward, and you're really future-proofing and protecting your technology as you move forward. So we all know budgets are tight in K through 12, and also, your resources are very tight. And I think it's important when you're looking at an access control deployment, you take those considerations into account. Next slide, please. Now let's take a look at another evolution in the access control world, specifically K through 12. We've got a lot of changes in technology when it comes to credentials in the last several years. And I also want to touch on readers. We had our partner from HID on here earlier. And when we look at reader technologies and how much that has changed, if you're not familiar with some of the cloning ability when it comes to card technology, I encourage you to take a look at the Flipper device and just YouTube it or Google it, and make sure that you don't have gaps in your security where somebody can easily clone a card and gain access to your facility. At that point, no access control system is going to be able to protect you if you've got outdated technology. In addition to that, credentials have changed. Mobile credentials are becoming much, much bigger, and that's ideal for staff. And this can either be Bluetooth technology, or a more secure platform would be your NFC technology, which the credential would sit in your wallet within your mobile device. We've also got smart cards, durable, cost-effective, much more secure than the standard proximity readers and credentials that have been out there for years. You can use multi-factor authentication when it comes to certain sensitive areas. Could be server rooms, administrative offices. That could consist of a keypad and a proximity card, or even a mobile app to confirm that you are gaining access to that building, in addition, or to that door, I should say, in addition to using your proximity card. Time-related credentials, extremely important. Contractors, visitors, temporary staff, to have credentials that expire on a schedule so that you don't have to maintain those credentials daily. They're scheduled to expire at a certain date that you set within the software system. Getting much, much bigger is facial recognition. The technology that has come along in facial recognition, it is eye-opening. And we're seeing this a lot more in athletics, number one, because typically your athletes aren't carrying a phone with them or a credential with them. And it used to be people would lean towards biometric readers, but oftentimes when you look at an offensive or defensive lineman, their fingers are taped up, or and they're not able to to get a proper reading on a biometric reader being thumbprint. So I would encourage you to, if those areas are a concern, facial recognition has come a very long ways in access control. Next slide, please. So it was mentioned earlier, interior classrooms and the suggestions and the requirements that come along with that. So I want to talk a little bit about some of your wireless options when you're deploying an access control system. Obviously, you've got wired. We're all familiar with a standard door strike and a reader that's hardwired back to a controller. It's typically used in main entrances, admin offices, server rooms. But when we get to the interior of a building and we're looking at a wireless option, it's extremely important to have real-time feedback. So we would see those typically deployed in classrooms, labs, difficult installations where it's either not aesthetically pleasing to run cable or the cost doesn't really make sense to get that reader out there. That's where I would look at a wireless solution. It's come a long ways. Like I said earlier, I've been in the industry now 27 years, and I can remember some of the original wireless deployments that were out there. And, many of you know the issues that you had with battery consumption, but the technology has changed significantly where that is not an issue anymore. No cabling, obviously. Same platform as wired and wireless doors. It's extremely important that you bring your wireless readers and locks directly into the access control system so that you're not managing two systems. And why does it matter to K through 12? Now, we talked about, the cost prohibitive aspect of running cable in some of your facilities. The big one that I want to talk about, because as we are sitting here at May 13th, I'm sure many of you are just watching the calendar to wait to kick off on those summertime projects. And you've got limited time to get those projects done, where a wireless lock deployment can really eliminate the amount of time and disruption to your facility so that you can get that system up and working in a timely manner with, as I said earlier, minimal disruption, and make that timeline before we get to August when schools open back up and welcome students back. Next slide, please. So we stated earlier that the front door today is extremely important, but oftentimes, we overlook other aspects of access control or protecting your facility. So I'm going to talk a little bit about visitor management right now. It's, a lot of schools still have a paper sign-in sheet, a lanyard, a photocopied ID, no way of really tracking an individual within your facility, and no way of really protecting an individual within your facility as well. An ideal visitor management system, you pre-register or you register easily on site when you check into that secure vestibule. You arrive and verify that you are the correct person that should be there by scanning your driver's license or another form of ID. You would be issued a credential potentially that can be used in specific areas within the facility and also limited with time constraints. I encourage this to auto expire as well within your visitor management system, and that provides you with a full audit log. Extremely important that when you're considering visitor management, that you're also looking at access control to make sure that the two are integrated and mirrored together and working together as one solution for you. Next slide, please. So here's a quick summary of kind of what we've talked about. And, we started out with talking about that front door, and then we expanded from there and got a little bit deeper into the cloud environment and cloud platform. And I remember it was probably about 4 or 5 years ago, I read an article and it said that 80+% of all access control deployments by 2027 will be a cloud solution. And I looked at that and said, that is a stretch. But today I'm seeing it in our world, in our environment. that many people are migrating off of on-premises solutions or doing, unfortunately, having to do a rip and replace to get to a cloud solution because they were on proprietary hardware. So we talked about open hardware and the benefits of making sure that you're on an open system. Wired access control, that's kind of the traditional access control that we're all used to. And then, of course, those wireless locks for interior classrooms and some of those requirements that come along with that. The ability to do lockdowns on those interior classrooms as part of one unified system. We talked a little bit about credentials, and I think it's extremely important that you take a look at your reader technology and your credential technology to be sure that you're on a secure platform. Visitor management ties in directly to all of that to protect not just your students, your staff, but your visitors as well. And none of these components are sufficient alone. It's more of a layered approach where together they work to provide a safe environment for your staff, your employees, your visitors, and of course your students as well. Next slide, please. In building on that summary, here are 3 common scenarios that how a holistic security solution can manage through each of these issues. So here's a situation where we have a threat identified near the school. Happens all the time. Could be in a neighborhood within a certain distance from the school. It could be on site at the school. How quickly can you lock down a building? In this incident here, the security coordinator opens an app and initiates the lockdown. All of this is done within 10 seconds. And I encourage all of you to really look at your lockdown procedure. Number 1, map it out and test it. Test it regularly. We're coming up on, school being let out here across the country very soon. This is a great time to test your lockdown and the functionality of that and make adjustments if you need to. Visitor pre-registers the previous evening. Arrives at the receptionist, gives them their identity to confirm they are who they said they are. The credential is issued, it's valid for 2 hours, and it automatically expires with a full audit trail. Extremely important. If there were an event on site when you've got visitors, you've got to quickly be able to determine who's in the building and who's not in the building. In the event of a fire alarm or some other life safety event, an audit trail and real feedback of who's in the facility is extremely important. We kind of started off the topic with a prop door, and we see it all the time. Unfortunately, most schools, or many schools, I should say, have aging HVAC infrastructure, and the controls don't always turn that valve off properly in a classroom. So a teacher inherently will prop that door open, which again is a breach of security. But in a properly deployed access control system, that prop door is going to create an alarm, and the security is going to be notified, and they're going to be able to address that very quickly before it becomes an issue. Next slide, please. So here I just want to end with a few questions you should consider when adding or migrating your access control system. Is your system open hardware or proprietary? Can you manage every door from one platform and have the integrations that are required to allow for you to manage the entire system through one platform? What happens when a credential is lost, or a staff member leaves, or you need to administer a school, a snow day, or a closure of some sort, make changes to the schedule on the fly? Does your visitor management system create an audit trail and truly document who's in the building? What certifications does your cloud provider hold? We didn't talk about it, but cybersecurity obviously is extremely important. I would encourage you, do your due diligence. Make sure that you're partnering with somebody who's a subject matter expert when it comes to cybersecurity, and they can provide the documentation to support that. Can we extend coverage to classrooms without recabling? Again, it's that wireless lock deployment that can secure those interior classrooms in a timely manner with little disruption. So if the answer points to gaps, that's useful. If they confirm and you can answer these in a positive manner, that's also useful. The conversation starts with a manufacturer that understands your needs and an integrator that carries those certifications and has a deep knowledge of K through 12. Everybody on this call today, did an amazing job of hitting on different points, and these are all subject matter experts. I encourage you to use your resources to make sure that you're working with the right people to secure your facility, not just from the front door, but throughout the entire building and campus. So thank you for your time today, and I will hand it over to Cameron.
Thank you, Andy. Great information. We now have time for a Q&A. So I'll bring everybody up, and as everyone comes up, and if you have questions, there's a chat box you can put your questions in, and I'll ask them. Also, for those watching on LinkedIn, you could do the same thing. But a few housekeeping notes before that. Thank you again to our sponsors, HID and Acre, and our partner sponsors, PASS and ASIS. Earlier on, Drew mentioned that an event that's coming up, and just again to clarify, will automatically register you for a follow-up webinar through SIA on June 18th at 1 p.m. featuring the new research from Texas State University, and this session will present some of the strongest empirical evidence to date on how door security and access control impact school active shooter outcomes, including both prevented incidents and security failures. And also in June, on June 24th, here in Washington, D.C., a live event related to perimeter security, Perimeter Prevent. It's highly relevant for school safety in many ways. It offers an in-person opportunity to engage with policymakers and industry leaders on broader security challenges, including access control, which was just mentioned, and perimeter defense, and everything else across the critical environment. And you can go to the SIA website to register for that. Perimeter Prevent is the name of that event. Again, on June 24th. So here's a couple questions, and there's a question that just came in. Yes, at the end of this recording, slides and contact information will be shared to answer the first question from you, Diane. But another question that came in from an anonymous attendee, two different questions, but I'll combine them into one. Any of you can answer. How should organizations, especially campuses, balance concerns about cloud data breaches versus on-prem solutions when it comes to privacy? And how does that impact their ability to support critical use cases like lockdown scenarios?
Yeah, great question. I would encourage you when you're working with an integrator and you're working with a manufacturer to do your due diligence. Ask the questions so that you have the proper documentation to be sure that whether it is on-prem or whether it is cloud, that you're working with a product that passes all of your cybersecurity standards. And that really comes down to not just the software and how data is managed, but the hardware as well. When you're looking at TLS encryption, make sure that you're moving towards TLS 1.3. When you're looking at reader technology, OSDP versus Wiegand, and some of those conversations are just as important as cybersecurity.
Excellent. Thanks, Andy. I see another question that's similarly related from Sal. What are the implications of the recent campus hack, and did this impact physical access?
So when they talk about a recent hack, I know that there's obviously ransomware that that happens, and typically when you see that, it's because of a security breach. So again, I would push on your manufacturers. I would push on your integrators to be sure that they've got the proper documentation in place to make sure that they're providing a secure environment. So it kind of piggybacks on the last answer, but documentation, partnering with the right people is key to providing not just a safe security system, but cyber secure as well.
The Canvas hack is what it was clarified. The
Yeah.
Canvas hack is a new kind of ransomware debacle.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I misunderstood you.
Yeah, so did I. Must have misread it. Another question: what are we doing to ensure only authorized staffs and students get into the building classrooms, and how are we digitalizing this apart from having security guards? Anyone?
I can take that one,
Thanks.
Cameron.
All right.
You know, this is part, excuse me, part of a, this is part of a holistic system. You know, you have to start with a risk assessment. You have to understand what the conditions are at the particular school building you're looking at, because, you know, a lot of things can just be accomplished with policies and procedures. But the incorporation of technology into that certainly is a huge benefit. I mean, when you start looking at door locking mechanisms where the keys have been issued since the building was built, and now we have a choice of recoring locks and putting in stronger doors, or do we add an electronic door strike and a card reader, you know, and then have a holistic system around access control and visitor management for, you know, teachers and authorized staff to be where they're supposed to be, students to be where they're supposed to be, and keep those that have malicious intent out. So it's not just a card, it's not just a controller, it's not just a door lock. It's a culture of safety and security, and creating that culture with a strategy and firm policies and procedures and technology.
Cam, this is Mike. I'm going to add to what Jeff just said, which is spot on.
Great.
This was a big eye opener for all of us, right? And so if we think about this, security, man, right? Cyber, physical, it doesn't matter, right? We have to have both. And I can find 10 schools within a stone's throw from me right now that have been compromised by human error, right? So it's not just technology and things you put in front of other things so that they don't get in, and, you know, making sure that everybody that accesses port 80 or port 25, excuse me, is validated, you know, be 80 and 20 email and web, right? In those ports. It doesn't really matter anymore. We have to take this same layered security concept that we use in physical security. Well, this originated in the government, right? It's called defense in depth, right? And it is no stranger to government systems, because when you have defense in depth and the same layered security approach that Chuck and everybody on this call talks about, we have to apply that all the time. But human error is what we need to look at, right? That error between the chair and the keyboard, as we say. Complacency, apathy, practical drift, look those up. It's something that we need to do, and you do that through training, right? Guys like Drew and Jeff, their organization trains more than it does anything else, right? It goes in there and it does assess, and it does give recommendations and solutions, but training is so important, because the human firewall is just as important as that technical firewall that you have out there. So think about that. Schools are very, very vulnerable just because of the nature of their business. It's open.
Yeah.
Who wants to hack a school? There's nothing here. There's no money. You know, there's no pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. There's more than that, right? There's young social security numbers that we can use and take and have. So it's much, much more than that. It's me being able to go into a school and change my grades. Yeah. But it's also somebody going in there as a cyber terrorist, taking over a camera system and an access control system. And now accessibility for one is accessibility for all, right? So we really have to be cognizant of the layers of cyber and physical, right? And when you talk about, and I'll answer pretty much all of these questions all together with the credential at the door, think about multi-factor authentication, MFA. Think about that at the credential level, And if you are having the level of information that you're protecting, let's say an MDF and an IDF room at a school, you might want to have two-factor authentication at the door, right? And there's three factors: who you are, what you have, and what you know. You know, who you are is your biometric. You know, what you have is your credential. What you know is your PIN, right? So the value of that information is how many credentials you put in front of it, right? So for now, our front door has one credential, right? But our MDF and our IDF rooms, our HR room, right? Our principals' offices might want to have two or three just because of the value of the data. So think about that when you're putting your risk management programs together.
Thanks, Mike. Drew, a question for you. What are some common mistakes you see when districts focus too heavily on technology without aligning it to policy, training, or operations?
And I think that has been a significant challenge in the school environment, because every school is worried about, where do we get the money from? How are we funding technology advances? And because of that, a lot of the time there's a lag. And then when something bad either happens at that school or hits the news, and all of a sudden the parents, the community, are all over those school administrators, those school board members. What are you doing to keep my kids safe? Are my kids safe at this school? There's often this knee-jerk reaction to, let's buy something that we can say, look, we bought this, we put it in, kids are safe. But as I talked about a little bit earlier, and I think everybody here has touched on, cameras, door controls, locks, analytics, these are all tools. They all have to be tools used to mitigate an identified risk. And a lot of the time, we can do that much more effectively as a baseline with training, with education, with policy, with just getting those people who are responsible for the school security program. And when I say that, that is everyone within the school environment. That's the administrators, that's the teachers, that's the students themselves, that's the parents, to understand the why we do things. Why should this door be kept locked? Why do we check the identification of people coming in? And if they understand the why, they'll be much less likely to try to breach that protocol and just say, oh, well, yeah, I can prop this back door open so the food delivery person can drop my lunch off. I don't want to walk all the way to the office, so I'll do that. But if they understand why we're locking those things down, why we're putting those things in place, they'll be much more likely to take an active role in it. And I think that really is. We oftentimes jump to the technology solution or the widget that we can buy and show the newest, shiniest thing to be able to say we're doing something, when really we need to step back and look at the holistic security program for the school and how we can better mitigate risk.
There are no more questions that have come in, but if any of you want to have a final word, we have a few more minutes before we're at time, so feel free to go final comments. Mike, anything?
So I'd like to say it was a pleasure being here today and speaking with these, experts. Great information. It's hard to take 20 years of school safety experience and pop it into 20 minutes, right? You can't cover everything, right? You just want to unload it. Everything has branches and it goes. What I will tell you is this: things are changing, right? I always point to the government because we used to do certification and accreditations on enclaves like military bases, right? When we started this thing, this was back in the 90s. And one thing that we have to understand is the digital and physical ecosystem that we're experiencing in the schools right now is a convergence. It's converged into where in a couple of years, it's just going that way. The same credential that I used to get into my building, I'm going to put into my computer, right? And we have those today in the form of crescendo cards. You put in your computer, and that credential is going to say, hey, access this information because I'm Mike Garcia. I can access this information, but I can't access this area or this information. And that's access control, right? Physical and cyber logical access control. Security is people, right? And that's the way it always has been. That's the way it always will be. And you need to provision and empower those people to do what they have to do to keep the organization running smoothly. And we can't forget that because training is super duper important, right? And you've seen one school, you've seen one school. They're all completely different, right? So everything that we've talked about today, please, if you're in the audience right now listening to this, take it in, understand how it applies to you, and make sure you're taking your school boards and your superintendents and you are helping educate them and helping them understand, utilizing the past guidelines and the ASIS standards, two huge tools, huge advancements in school safety. Please utilize those, educate, and maybe have a workshop with your, I know you have your safety committees, but a workshop with your school boards. I deal with school boards every day. I'm at a school board conference right now. And that's what I'm talking to them about is when you don't understand something, you tend to push it to the side. Please understand this. It's very, very important. It's a matter of life and death, right? Thank you.
Mike. Chuck, anything from you?
No, I'd like to build on, well, what Mike said was awesome. And, that's one of the past core principles. But I want to build on what Drew said a little bit about the policies and procedures, roles and training. I come from a technology background, so I was one of those that came into this realm equipped with surveillance, access control, communications, and IT, RF guy, so I came into it, with all this knowledge about the systems. And boy, did I learn a lesson about all of that technology without the proper procedures and policies. I learned the hard way that we had to step back and really take a look at, what are we doing with this? How do we get the community involved? How do we get everybody on the same page? How do we know what to do with all this stuff? And man, I'd learned a lesson. So I would just encourage people to think not just about the technology, use the past guidelines with all of the different components for sure. And, look at the risk assessments and everything, but really think through what the culture of safety and security is like at that school and get parents involved in the community and the school board and get everybody on that same page and really make sure that way, even the students, when they see something, they'll say and do something. And it just takes the whole team and the whole community to make our schools, safe like they probably were when we were all in school. We want that again, right?
Good. Thanks. Drew.
Yeah, no, I think this has been great today, hearing different perspectives. One thing I do want to mention, though, and I meant to mention it when we were presenting, but neglected to, a lot of people in the industry, I see confusion on, well, there's all this guidance coming out. ASIS has produced the ANSI standard. PASS produces the guideline. Department of Homeland Security's Critical Infrastructure Security Agency produces a K-12 school security guideline. Well, which of these should I follow? And then there's all sorts of guidance from different states, different municipalities, different vendors coming out. One thing I do want to say that as we developed the ASIS standard, and Jeff alluded to it a little bit, we worked with a number of different stakeholders and tried really hard to make sure that it was aligned with PASS, that it was aligned with the guidance from DHS. So these aren't separate guidances. They are all moving a school in the right direction and all provide a little bit different piece of it. We look at programmatic guidance and how do you build an effective program. PASS gets down more into the weeds of that. CISA's documentation gives some other high-level guidance. So these are not things that are competing with each other. These are all resources that a school security professional who's helping build the program for a school district should be looking at all of them and using all of them.
Great points. And it's the nature of standards and interoperability. This is the theme of that, and you're right on point. Let's go with Jeff. Final words.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Well, first off, I want to thank SIA for this opportunity. Cameron, this has been just absolutely amazing. And to my colleagues, Chuck and Mike, man, you guys are spot on. We should do this more often. We've got some really, really great information here for folks, but that's just it. It's information. The past guidelines, the ASIS standards are both documents. Unless you open them up and read them, unless you download them and make yourself familiar with what's inside, they're just documents sitting on a shelf. Empower yourselves, right? Empower yourselves, educate yourselves so that we can take this forward. We've learned a lot over the last few years, and we understand that we need to create a safe and secure environment for our children. Children do not need to be concerned with the next act of violence. They need to be concerned with what's on the school lunch menu and what they're doing at recess and what's on the next pop quiz. Those are the things they need to be concerned with. And it's our job to take this information and knowledge, move it forward, educate people so that we can have create good programs and create a culture of safety and security in our school buildings. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Andy.
Yeah, thank you. So again, thank you, Sia. Thank you to the speakers today. I found it quite educational to hear all of the experts. And with that, when you're making a school safety decision, this is just a quick snapshot of the experts that you've got, the resources that you've got available. You've got, the PASS to provide information. You've got ASIS to provide information. Keep in mind that it's not just one person's decision within your district. Make sure that you're making the right financial decision and, of course, safety decision, because Jeff said it great. Our students deserve to be safe when they walk inside of your building. They deserve to not have to worry about school safety. So I encourage you to use the resources that are out there and be sure that more than just one person is involved in that decision and that you're using everything available to you to make the right path forward.
Thank you, Andy. And to that, all of the resources, you can visit the SIA's website, securityindustry.org, the PASS website, passk12.org,
Yep.
ASIS, ASISonline.org, and more if you want more information. The next SIA Vertical Insight Symposium is on June 10th, and it touches upon oil and gas, those industries, that single industry. You'll get a survey that should be shared in the chat. Feel free to fill it out. Join us for all of our other events that are coming up. And thank you to all of our speakers and to our sponsors, HID and ACRE, and to our partners, PASS and ASIS. And the recording will be shared as well as the slides and contact information if you need more information from our presenters. So thank you all.